our current president very seriously. And so it would be necessary for the next president to say, look, we do not approve of an Israeli attack on Iran under any conditions, and for him to say that in public. Now, there would be some domestic fallout to that from those who, like Rick Perry yesterday, said he supports Israel no matter what, his words. But that would be a very essential step that a president could take to prevent all this stuff from happening.
I hear what you're saying. Okay, my initial thrust is to take a different position, a slightly different position on this. And this is to work aggressively to solve the Palestinian question with Israel. If we can solve that question, then that takes all the tension out of the situation. Okay, and then I think everyone will start singing a different tune.
I agree completely.
Okay.
We need to give a briefing on that.
And I know that there's difficulties with that in terms of the hardliners in Israel, and there's also difficulties with respect to the radical forces and the Palestinians. But I think that that's really the only solution long-term for this problem. And so that will be my main thrust going forward.
That's great,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but in the meantime, yes, we have to engage with the Israelis and make sure that we're all working together and not at cross purposes. And what is our overall goal here? To maintain the peace, okay, and the protection of all the people, not just the Israelis, but also the Palestinians.
Correct.
Yeah.
We have one other item here we wanted to raise with you.
Okay.
The paper PDB is in your folder. Today's events really overshadow them. This has to do with the Afghanistan and Pakistan. As you're aware, we killed 24 Pakistani NATO forces. Yeah.
Very regrettable.
And this had not been sorted out yet. You know, the Pakistanis are claiming they warned us that they were Pakistani soldiers. The upshot is very, very serious, Mr. President. Number one, the Pakistanis have refused to come to Bonn, to the multilateral conference that was going to really make some real progress on this. But number two, and I have to say this from the perspective of a former infantry and intelligence officer, what we used to call locks, okay, lines of communication and supply, they have been broken. They are absolutely necessary to supply our troops in Afghanistan. The Pakistanis have closed them down. So, in the past, they've reopened them after a decent interval. I'm not sure they're going to do that this time. So this is something we wanted to call to your attention as a very, very serious.
Thank you. Yeah, we have contingency plans for this scenario that we've worked out with the Department of Defense. We will be increasing the amount of materials that go through Pakistan, and we will, as you know, it's already been announced that we'll be withdrawing troops soon, and so we are, ratcheting down. Now, I know a lot of people in the country are disappointed with withdrawing troops from these areas. My current assessment is that we are not providing a safe haven for terrorists to attack the U.S. We will maintain special forces groups in that area, and indeed, if there's any trouble, we will respond to it directly. But we have a strategic advantage if we withdraw troops, and we saw this with Iraq. Who gets worried when we withdraw troops and just put them elsewhere? And the answer is the Iranians, get worried about, because now we're much more agile. We're not pinned down. And the other place, the other country that really worries about our ability to move troops around is North Korea. So there are some real positive benefits to pulling back. So I'm not sure that directly answers your question, but I'm afraid that that about covers about all that I can cover today.
No, I just wanted to make sure that you knew the implications. Yes. The Bonn conference was supposed to be a regional effort to solve this problem. Now it's gone by the board.
I will inform the State Department, and they are just going to have to slog through this problem. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome, Mr. President.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, so we're back, and thank you, Dr. Greene, Ray McGovern, Coleen Rowley, for taking us behind the scenes into the Oval Office. And so how do we get our questions answered? How do we see these behind the scenes? How do we learn more about this? That's what Democracy or Empire, this series, is intended to and designed to do, is to help us look at these questions and get the answers we want. And we will have Governor Roemer also, who had this briefing, a similar briefing, but he's a different person than Dr. Greene. And so we'll see how Governor Roemer, as president, approaches this and interacts with the CIA briefer and the head of the FBI, acting in the person of Miss Rowley. We were over taping this at St. Anselm's, and there was a professor there that was teaching a course in terrorism and in the criminal justice division, the head of that division, and he welcomed Coleen Rowley into his class. And after the taping was finished for Governor Roemer, Ray McGovern also went up there. And in the process, Ray McGovern said, well, you solve this problem of terrorism and problems in the world like you solve curing malaria. How do you cure malaria? Well, you figure out where the mosquitoes are, where the problem is. And then we hire these sharpshooters, and they point at the mosquitoes as they're flying out of the swamp, and then they shoot. No, he said, no, that's not how we solve malaria. How do we solve it? And he turns to the class. And there was one fellow, Benjamin Horton, in the front row. He said, you drain the swamp. And Ray McGovern says, exactly, that's what you do. And so I interviewed Benjamin Horton and said to him, okay, what question do you have for the president? So here's St. Anselm's student, Benjamin Horton, the head of the class here in terms of answering Mr. McGovern's questions. This is what he would pose to the presidential candidates. Let's hear from him.
Benjamin Horton. Okay, good. Benjamin Horton, you want a question to the next president of the United States, what?
I would like to know what his role would be in illegal immigration and preventing that, or dealing with that in America.
Okay, and what should his answer be?
Well, I think something needs to be done, but I'd like to see definitely some different options. You know?
Okay, what's your concern? I hear in the question a concern that there's too much illegal immigration.
Right.
And what is that concern? They're taking American jobs, or they're creating crime, or it's just not following the rules? What's the deal?
I think education. I think healthcare, American employment,
this is a Are you from Manchester?
Yes.
Yes, and so you get a lot of immigrants in Manchester, and because there's no income tax, there's no sales tax.
Right.
You're paying for the education of people coming on property taxes.
Right.
And your parents are saying, we're tired of these high property taxes.
Right.
Okay. Well, good. And so we'll try and share your perspective. Thank you.
Nice.
Okay.
And so, thank you, Mr. Horton. Thank you, St. Anselm's. We have questions as citizens, don't we? And we want to have the answers. And so one of the primary questions we're asking in this series, Democracy or Empire, is which do we choose as citizens, and how are our voices heard? And so when I was at this great class, I took a moment to assure the students that we had their permission to air these tapes of them in class, but I also polled them, saying, okay, how many people choose democracy in this class? Or if Chalmers Johnson's right, we have to choose between democracy or empire. How many people choose empire?
We would like to share this and this class on the internet, and we'll give you a site where people can do that. Secondly, we are doing a series of programs, Democracy or Empire, where they appeared next week on Channel 23 on Monday, 8 and 10 o'clock is The Cost of Defense, and then Democracy or Empire. And if I could take a quick poll of the class, we have a great analyst, Chalmers Johnson, who wrote a trilogy, Blowback, what was the second one? Nemesis is the third one.
Sorrows of Empire.
Thank you. Sorrows of Empire is the third one. Excellent. A conservative writer and analyst. But he says, you can choose to be a democracy or you can choose to be an empire, but you can't be both. You have to choose. So, can I see a show of hands? If that is the choice, that we're forced to choose one or the other, how many people here choose democracy? How many people here choose empire? Amen.
I was asking that question and holding my camera, but it was a close-in shot, a close-up. But what I saw when I asked was that 80% of the class put their hands up and said, we want democracy. And when I said, how many people here choose empire? Not a hand went up. And so how do we register that? This is St. Anselm's. And so we're trying to figure out how to ask these questions of the presidential candidates and how to empower and enable fellow citizens to express their points of view. Well, today we were supposed to be doing, as you probably remember or know, the cost of defense. Yes, this $1 trillion, and we talked about $1 trillion last week and tried to give people a sense of that. So go back to that if you're fuzzy on what $1 trillion is and how it differs from $1 billion and $1 million. It's significant. And so how do we do that? How do we get this understanding? We're not doing it today because of a problem. The wonderful guest that was scheduled for today, Chris Hellman from the National Priorities Project, a senior person in that group down in Northampton, Massachusetts, was taken to the hospital last night. And so we're dedicating this program to Chris and to good health care in the United States. And we look for and hope that Chris is going to be back to us in 2 weeks, because next week is a wonderful man, Richard Kaufman, from Economists for Peace and Security, a man that I worked with in the United States Senate. He was a staffer for Senator Proxmire of Wisconsin. I worked for Senator Williams, and he organized a wonderful seminar where we heard from analysts and top people about the military's budget and things like the cost of defense. And so I'm here today in part because of Richard Kaufman and what he shared. But we couldn't have Chris here today, and I dropped my co-producer, Paul Downey, off at the Veterans Hospital here in Manchester on the way to the studio because he was having problems. And so we wish both these wonderful people well and dedicate this program to them. So we have a couple other kind of reminders. We would like to bring back, remember we've talked about different quotes. My favorite is probably either the Madison quote or one that we'll be bringing up. But we have power in Thomas Jefferson's quote about wars and the arithmetic of wars. We talked about $1 trillion, and that's probably about what the Pentagon budget is, certainly with the intelligence part, because we have 730 plus major bases around the world and over 6,000 on American soil and in American territories. So that's expensive, $1 trillion, a staggering amount. In Bill the Lobsterman's terms, an obscene amount. And so we have Thomas Jefferson reminding us, the founding Declaration of Independence drafter, one of our founding fathers, early president, Thomas Jefferson reminding us what our perspective should be on this. And we have Thomas Jefferson we're bringing back.
I've just written a piece
on the prospects of war for our nation, and I'd like to read it to you. Never was so much false arithmetic employed on any subject as that which has been employed to persuade nations that it is their interest to go to war. Were the money which it has cost to gain at the close of a long war a little town or a little territory, the right to cut wood here or catch fish there, expended instead in improving what they already possess, in making roads, opening rivers, building ports, improving arts, and finding employment for their idle poor, it would render them much stronger, much wealthier, and happier. This, I hope, will be our wisdom.
Yes. Thank you, Thomas Jefferson. And thank you, Gus. This will be our wisdom. So how many of these presidential candidates are being wise with us, or just wise? How many of them are talking about helping the arts, using the money that we would spend on war and preparation for war for things that are productive, that help our citizens? How many of them are saying, as Jefferson said, it's the role of government to help find jobs for the idle poor? That's what government's about. Helping people, working together. That's who the government is. It's us. It's you and you and you. The government's not the party that's in temporarily. Let's remember Mr. Twain, Mark Twain. He tried to remind us of that in one of our earliest programs, that the government is not about giving us orders, because it's only, in the saddle temporarily. It takes our orders. We're to give it orders. And it's not the publisher of the newspaper or the superintendent of schools, as important as they are. They're not the country. But it's you and you and you and me and you. We're the country. And we're the ones that have to stand up and say, this is what we want for our country. This is what we're about. And we should listen to the wisdom of people like Thomas Jefferson to say, yes, what are the things that we can do, and insist that we do together as a government to make sure that people have jobs, that there aren't idle poor, no, but there are people that are engaged in work and productivity, for themselves, their community, their families. So who among the presidents, where's the wisdom? Who among the presidential candidates are speaking in these terms? That's what we're trying to bring in Democracy or Empire, because democracy or empire is the choice before us. We're at that crossroads. Well, we have one other quote here, one that should be familiar to you. While I love Madison and his quote about the worst evils to liberty is war, because from these armies, debts, and taxes, and the few control the many, there's all kinds of power, and we'll discuss that probably in future programs. But we have this quote from my favorite quoters. And that's Bill from Maine, November 7th, 2011. And he shares with us, and I'm going to have to kind of pull out some of the power of his, because he talks about when he was in the Navy and how up the line at each level they just tacked on 30% more for the budget and the proposed budget for the next year. And so the budget is so crazy and out of proportion that so much of it is wasted. It's use or lose at the end of the year, because he talks about the first quarter, it's a little bit lean. The second quarter, the budget has been passed by Congress, and so everything's fat and happy. And then the next two quarters, the third and the fourth quarter, it's throwing money, away if you have to, in order to make sure you get the same amount the next year. That's our money. That's taxpayers' money. That's not security. That's just waste. That's just fraud. That's just abuse. So he also talks about the importance of making. Let me pull it up. No accounting. That there's no accounting for this budget. Can that be right? Where are these candidates that are shouting and saying this is an outrage, that we can't account for our taxpayers' money? I haven't heard them. If you got a clip of one of them saying that, send it in to us and we'll play that candidate and we'll play it again and again, because that's what they should be saying. 24 agencies in Washington, D.C. 24. 23 have been able to do a full accounting of their budgets, where your money and my money goes, taxpayers' money goes. Only one has been unable to do that. The Pentagon, the Department of Defense. Where's the wisdom of that? Here, have this bag of $700 billion to $1 trillion and don't have to count for it. That's wrong. And that needs to stop if we're to remain a democracy. Otherwise, empire, here we are. So those are two things that Bill Lobsterman from Maine points out to us that we need to be vigilant about. The other thing is, let's cut back. The Cold War's over. We spend what all other countries in the world together spend on military activity. We spend an equivalent amount. Look at all these other countries, many of them are our allies. They're in NATO, France and Italy and Great Britain. These are our NATO partners. And they're just a part of what the rest of the world spends. It's so out of proportion. It's why I think Bill Lobsterman from Maine says that this is obscene. This has gone too far. And what is his solution? Let's cut it in half. Strike Chalmers. Bill Moyers, in a great interview with Chuck Spinney, a senior Pentagon person, career guy. Spinney lays out, and it's on our website. So go to the Perspective, and there's a link there. It's still an excellent article to read. So we will be bringing you the cost of defense. I'm sorry, not today, but we wish well Chris Hellman, and we also Paulie Downey. But next week, please be tuned in because we have a wonderful guest, Richard Kaufman, and he's going to be talking about the nitty-gritty of defense. He's going to be talking about democracy or empire. And so we welcome your participation, your questions. We'll be doing more of those tapes, and we look forward to seeing you back here next week finding out or hearing from Mr. Kaufman, from Economists for Peace and Security, what his perspective, his rich perspective, after years of working in the United States Senate, trying to grapple with these issues, where he is today and where he thinks we are in terms of democracy or empire. Which will we choose?